Hello and welcome to Inside Marvel from ABC News Digital. I'm your host, Walt Hickey from 538, and I am joined today by a whole bunch of guests, and we are going to talk about the Secret Empire event, issue number 2. So, we're joined by Axel Alonso from Marvel. We are joined by Michael Rothman from ABC News, and out remote, we've got the writer himself, Nick Spencer. How's it going, Nick?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, we are coming off a action-packed 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we had our first issue, and we looked into issues 0 and 1. Then last weekend, we saw the Free Comic Book Day issue came out, and now we've got the second issue of this huge overarching arc that is retooling the Marvel Universe. Nick, can you just kind of walk us through where we're at right now?
Yeah, of course. In the Free Comic Book Day, we filled in some of the blanks in between our 0 issue and the first issue. We showed the big battle on DC when Hydra revealed itself, when Captain America revealed himself as the leader of Hydra. And there was a major confrontation between him and various heroes in the Marvel Universe, which ended in a big climactic moment that got everybody talking, which was Captain America picking up Mjolnir, despite being Hydra's supreme leader. So that was a big shock and horror moment that we closed our Free Comic Book Day on. In Secret Empire 2, we pick up after the events of our first issue, when Hydra has just bombed Las Vegas. The heroes are digging through the rubble trying to find survivors, and that leads to a major schism between the heroes. Black Widow sets off with some of the younger heroes, and their intention is to assassinate Captain America. They've decided that this has gone on long enough. Meanwhile, Tony Stark and Hawkeye are on the side of trying to reassemble the cosmic cube that did this to Steve in the first place. And they set off with a group of heroes, including Mockingbird and Ant-Man and Hercules and Quicksilver, to try to save Steve. So the heroes are off in their separate directions, and we end that issue with a major reveal that's got everybody talking now. Which is,
we will get to that shortly. Again, so a lot going on.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned
After this commercial break.
Yeah. So I want to go through this issue bit by bit because there's a lot to process in these. There's a ton of moving parts. So we open on, again, bombed out Las Vegas, but then we go over to New York, and New York has been kind of consumed by the Dark Force dimension, right? A whole bunch of, whenever you see a demon get banished in the Marvel Universe, they end up here, and now here is in New York City. So again, we see the one ray of hope that we've got is this character Dagger, and part of this Cloak and Dagger duo. Axel, who are these folks?
Cloak and Dagger are beloved characters from Marvel mythology. They're light and dark. I think Nick can speak better to the significance of Cloak in this story, but we were thrilled to have them play such a prominent role in this series and beyond.
Absolutely. Nick, what's Cloak doing here, and what's Dagger doing here, when it comes to the role that she's playing in New York City?
Yeah, well, New York is trapped inside the Dark Force dimension. Manhattan is trapped inside the Dark Force, and that means there's literally no light. The only light that's available to them is Dagger. Dagger is a very powerful hero, and she's able to illuminate the city for a few hours a day at enormous strain to herself. So she is basically the only way that everybody is managing to survive within the Dark Force. She's really the key that all of these heroes are holding on to now.
Well, she's not the only way that folks are surviving, because we actually have this other cool element going on, which is the machinations of Kingpin. And again, Kingpin is one of the iconic villains of the Defenders, of Daredevil in particular. And what he's doing is he's building a protection racket. Now, granted, he's not doing protection against the mob. He's doing protection against actual Dark Force demons and bad folks trying to rip off churches and whatnot. But he's doing work. And so what's this going on? What are we kind of seeing laid down here? What's going on in New York City when it comes to the underground?
Yeah, Wilson Fisk is the kind of guy, he never lets a good crisis go to waste. He's gonna take advantage. He's gonna use this to further his own goals, and there are big plans for Kingpin and for Wilson Fisk coming up within the Marvel Universe, and this helps set that up.
Very much so. This is stage one of a long-term plan we have for Fisk. See what you want about Fisk. He also does love New York, and I think that's worth noting.
Yeah.
He's got lots of motives to protect New York, but one of them is that he's born and bred and he does care about the city.
We saw that in the Daredevil series a little bit in season 1 and on Netflix. Sorry to deviate from publishing, but Vincent D'Onofrio. It was what made his character compelling was that he loved New York and was doing what he thought was right for his city. This version of Kingpin seems a little more nefarious, but also that element is there where he's kind of setting himself up, and you can tell it's coming down the road.
The best villains are complex and have multiple
Yeah.
motivations. Yeah.
Say what you will about where he lands on the law, but he's a patriot, damn
Exactly.
it. All right, I'll take it. So going back out west to, again, where the Avengers are posted up, we see a whole bunch of interesting goings-on. And one of the key things that we find that breaks in this issue is the actual impact that Rick Jones's work has done. And whether it's the stealing of Death Star plans, whatever you want to call it, he has figured out a way that some of our heroes can potentially solve what's gone wrong with Captain America. Again, this is a panel from week 1, but this week what we've kind of seen is that Rick Jones has a solution here. Nick, what's the way out? What's his proposed way of solving the Captain America issue?
Yeah, Rick is really the one who alerts the heroes to what's happened to Steve. He kind of ends that mystery for them. Which is to say that everything that's happened to Steve is the result of the Cosmic Cube and the result of what the Red Skull did to him via Kobik. So Rick is really the one who, through hacking into Hydra's files and then getting that information to the heroes, breaks all that wide open. We got a beautiful spread by Andrea Sorrentino in the issue that really illustrates everything that's happened in Captain America Steve Rogers to date.
So at this point, we again have a way out for some heroes, but not everybody's taking it. And I really want to dive in here. We've got a whole bunch of beautiful panels from this book. Who's the artist, by the way, on this issue?
Andrea Sorrentino.
Sorrentino, yeah, it just did journeyman work here. And so we've got a bunch of panels about Black Widow and Hawkeye and how they kind of have a distinct split going on here. Yep, see, there's the panel that you were just talking about of the events of what's going on in Captain America. And so moving on to what's the role of Widow moving forward in this? Because, again, we have, she has an encounter with Hawkeye, and two very old friends make the decision to go separate ways, or at least one of them does.
In a very good way.
Yeah, right. So here, what are we looking at here? This is, again, Widow kissing Clint Barton, the luckiest thing that's happened to him in quite some time.
And then proceeding to punch him in the face.
Yeah, there's also that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll speak to this very briefly, and Nick can elaborate. But the Black Widow has a very complicated past, and there was a point in time when she was an assassin, and I think that she's looking at what she's seeing in front of her, and she's contemplating the most lethal option, and that's a significant thing. I think it's consistent with her path, and consistent with who she is, and quite frankly, might be the only solution.
Well, they also bring up, I think it was kind of embedded in there, which was great as far as background. She mentions when they're arguing, her and Hawkeye. Hawkeye wants to save him again. Obviously, she thinks that they've run out of opportunities. But I think she mentions in there all the times in this series that we've thought it could go a different way. So there is background in there that I feel like they've kind of, I don't want to say being tricked to thinking that, oh, maybe this happened or that happened, but finally knowing. I don't think she's really convinced at what Rick Jones has sent.
Whereas, again, if we kind of look at the character of Clint Barton in these books, historically he's a guy who has, again, he's not the brightest guy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but he's definitely the most loyal. And the idea is that Captain America's the guy who taught him how to throw a punch. And you can tell that he's really just grasping for possible ways of redemption. Whereas in this, it seems like, again, assassin past, potential assassin future. Widow appears to have kind of made a line in the sand.
Well, plus Barton's reeling from the fact that he did kill Banner. So that's brought up in there in the argument, too. So there's a lot of emotions, a lot of mental aspects playing on there. So, and I think she's also feeding off that, too, and saying, well, you're just grieving off this, and now you don't want to kill another longtime friend.
Speaking of potentially killing another longtime friend, Widow has an encounter with somebody who was recently forecasted in a recent Civil War to kill Captain America. And again, we look at, her interactions with Miles Morales, and again, just the champions in general, and that's a key element of this book. We actually have that panel up right now. Nick, what's going on here?
Yeah, Miles is going to play a major role in our series, and if you read Civil War II, you know that there was the vision of Miles killing Steve Rogers on the steps of the Capitol that has haunted Miles ever since. It's followed him around, and he's still struggling to come to terms with that. And now that Nat has come forward with this proposal, to take the most lethal option with Cap. He feels like this is preordained, that this is predestined, that he doesn't have a lot of choice in this. So he follows Widow out, and his friends and the champions come along with him, and that's really the start of their adventure.
So, and again, we're going to get to making sense of this big old event and figuring out how these books play along with each other. But there is actually going to be a separate one-shot addressing what goes on between Widow and these folks. Because, again, we have a great kind of series of panels. Sorrentino outdid himself. And where we're going back to the Red Room. Axel, can you kind of go into a little bit of what the Red Room in this
The Red Room was in Soviet Russia. The Red Room was where Natasha was trained, brainwashed, wiped, and turned into the lethal assassin that she was at the outset of her life. And she obviously transcended that. Her arc is much more complicated than that, but it haunts her to this day.
And now she's reformed to the point where she's recruiting child soldiers and stuff.
Exactly.
And dramatically cutting her hand to make the Red Room. Yeah,
exactly.
Listen, the aesthetic, you can't compete with that.
She's a performer. It's fine.
So, again, she is working with the champions to get them prepared to do essentially one of the largest lifts that they have ever had to do in the Marvel Universe so far.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, how far are they willing to go? I think that it's a little bit more complicated, the dynamic that drives the champions to follow Natasha. Not all are sold on the lethal option, but I think that they feel action is needed. So I think there's going to be tension in that group for the duration of this mission. And we really hope that Miles image haunts readers as much as it haunts him.
Yeah. Now, we get to, again, what we've been delaying this entire time. Who's that new weird old character that you introduced at the end of this particular issue, Nick?
Yeah, who's that guy?
Yeah. He looks a bit familiar.
Is that the Last Jedi?
Face.
Is that the Last Jedi?
Well, we are looking at a guy, he beats up a whole bunch of, those Hydra? Either way.
Serpent Society, Hydra agents, yes.
Boom! So he beats up a whole bunch of Serpent Society, and who are we talking here, Nick? Is it the big return?
Well, it certainly looks and sounds like the Steve Rogers that we know and love, with a little extra facial hair. But it's designed to get you asking questions now. It's designed so that you're wondering what could happen next. But if you're looking for a ray of hope in all this, this is the first one we've given you in quite a while.
I mean, my name is Steve Rogers. I'm trying to get home. That's a stand-up and cheer moment for fans who have seen a character that is so essential to the Marvel mythos go through quite a bit in the past year. What are the stakes here? How do you redeem this guy?
How do you? I mean, we painted him into a corner. Yeah, exactly. Like Nick says, that page is meant to provoke questions first and foremost.
I have many.
At the crux of all this is that when we set about telling the story, we knew it was going to raise eyebrows, and we also knew that we were painting Steve Rogers into a corner. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do you get him out? Indeed, can you get him out? That's going to be the fun ride ahead.
Absolutely. And so, again, the news actually just dropped earlier this week that this is going to be a 10-issue series.
Yes.
So we have, looking at 8 more issues after this to kind of figure out what the journey of this celestial figure in the woods of Canada, emerging triumphant after beating up the Serpent Society, ends up going. I want to kind of move on. Oh, yeah, sorry, Michael, you had something.
I was going to say, I would ask what the possibilities are for this, which I know I'm not going to get an answer.
Go ask away.
But maybe I could ask it in a roundabout way, like what are the craziest theories and scenarios you've heard from this ending page? Because a few come to mind immediately. Like, is this an alternate timeline? Is this maybe the cube spit out a person to balance the good and bad of Captain America? There's so many different things here. I just love to get your take on this because it's so fascinating. And the questions you said, a few questions. There's millions that come from this.
Yeah, it's been really cool to just see all the theories that have popped up already. I guess if I were going to give a hint, I would just say we weren't terribly interested in we talked about kind of stories about stories. We didn't want to do something like that. We wanted to do something that was fundamentally about Steve Rogers, about the Steve Rogers that we are all invested in, that we've all been pulling for so many years, and who means so much to so many people. We really wanted him to be at the core of this story. He always has been. That's really what this section of the story is about. It's not so much about pulling from something very distant or pulling from Marvel trivia.
Axel, you have been on the show a number of times, and when you said the word hint, Nick, I've never seen you tense up.
No, I had full confidence Nick would know where to draw the line.
And, Nick, what was that hint again? I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
All right. Now, so this is an event, and events mean that there's more than one book coming out, that this is a story that a universe is telling and not just one story in particular. So what we were hoping to do is you've got a number of books coming out, Axel, over the course of this. A few are directly tied to the Secret Empire book main run. A few are just the stories of different characters throughout your universe who are just kind of, again, dealing with the move of Cap. We talked about this a lot during the Civil War show last year, and it's really cool to kind of watch a whole universe move in lockstep and tell one huge, compelling story. So I wanted to go through a few of these real quick. Anybody kind of feel free to chime in if you have questions, because what's so fun about this is that these are stories that are kind of peeling off sub-threads going through this main book. And Nick, I'd love your thoughts when it comes to, again, what kind of story you think that these folks are capable of telling when it comes to this. And the first one that comes to mind is the Underground one. Let's talk about the Cosmic Cube a bit. And Nick, again, you've worked with this a bunch. Kobik, can you go into, again, we've got 4 heroes in search of the Cosmic Cube. Why?
Yeah, they believe if they can pull enough of these fragments together, if they can reassemble the Cosmic Cube, that they can fix what's been done to Steve. So this team is really out in the world trying to find those cube fragments. The fragments have been scattered in various locations. There's danger following every single one. Hydra is after them as well. So this is really the team that's focused on collecting those fragments.
So again, we've got this thread. We've got Rick Jones comes out. He says, hey, if you get a Cosmic Cube, you can maybe solve the problem. And we've got this group of heroes racing Baron Zemo to try to get this cube, because, again, this is a great way to potentially solve this issue, right?
Well,
Yep.
no, I would just ask, because I think maybe for the general fans out there, because I thought it was very interesting explaining the backstory of Kobik and the cube, and how I love the imagery of how Kobik, as a little girl, was cuddling up with the Red Skull, and that, really, yeah. he got her affinity, and then that's why she, was able to change.
Horrible man, great father.
Yeah,
it's
great
weird.
father. Hey, playing football with her, it's great. Yeah. But yeah, if they do reassemble this, who's to say that Kobik would even, allow this to happen? What goes into that as far as that, sub thread within a sub thread?
Yeah, exactly. And that's again, going back to Natasha's argument and why she feels like it's such a long shot. That this is clearly, a mission with a very low chance of success. But these heroes are very much kind of trying to cling to that idealism and the hope that it can all work out in the end.
So, again, that's Underground. That is the story of what seems like it could be a one-way trip for a lot of people trying to get this Cosmic Cube that could bring Steve back. Now, going right off what you were saying, we've got Secret Empire Uprising. And Secret Empire Uprising is the story of Widow building her child soldier army in order to basically maybe just make an end run and try to go after the head of Hydra. Because we know what happens when you cut off the heads of Hydra, the Hydras die, right? That's the
that's right. It's done. That's it.
Exactly.
So again, Widow is training some of these champions. They've been growing and becoming more and more enmeshed in the Marvel Universe over the past 2-3 years. Some really compelling characters, and this book is kind of looking at how Widow is able to kind of, maybe get a heel turn for some of these folks. Maybe make them do some dire stuff that they haven't been forced to do and confront. So again, this is a very cool team. This is the Uprising book. Anybody have any questions?
Are they aware, or is anybody aware of Madame Hydra at this point? Or is she kind of still in the shadows, still kind of pulling...
No, she's a public figure in that people know
cool.
who she is. But she definitely keeps to the shadows a little more. She's not directly on the council. She's, a figure with some mystery to her.
But you've seen her in, like, the Daily Bugle on a few occasions, maybe, right? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, photos exist.
All right.
She's in the background of Cap, always giving speeches, on Capitol Hill.
Well, it's funny. We are so good at transitions today because our next book that we want to talk about is the United book. And this has a lot to do with how Cap's running his government and how Cap's interacting with the mutants at the moment. Again, we kind of talk about some different factions that we've seen recently and how they're dealing with it. The Inhumans picked a fantastic time to go the heck off world. The mutants, on the other hand, have their own nation they are confronting with, again, the number one geopolitical foe is now Captain America's Hydra-owned United States of America. So, again, this is just kind of, there's a lot of consequences to these events that we're seeing, and this is just one of many.
And it's worth noting the X-Men had just exhaled because they've gotten past the Terrigen Mist and they've gotten past the No More Mutants decree that had their species, on the edge of the endangered species list. So I think this is a this is bad timing for them as well. They just had a reprieve, and now they're right back.
It's like the X-Men; they just can't catch a break. They're like the Peter Parker of the Marvel universe. It's insane. So. Next up, and again, this is a thread that you introduced in the book number 1, where we see a number of heroes. I recall Thor, I recall Vision, I recall Scarlet Witch, I believe, but they are collaborating with the Hydra-owned government. And so this is, if you look at what's going on in the main Avengers book, it's in many ways, again, looking at what's going on here in the Hydra Avengers and what's kind of going on with this official organization, so to speak. And so you were very coy on this last week, but what do you kind of foresee for these Hydra-affiliated Avengers?
Well, they're all coming from very different places. We saw in the pre-comic book day, we got some hints that Scarlet Witch and Vision were both sort of co-opted, that their service to Hydra might be against their will. With Odinson, the story is very different, and that's something that we're going to be getting into, particularly in Secret Empire 5 and in some various tie-in issues, and that'll play a big role, as we move forward. For Odinson, he's seen Steve pick up the hammer, and that's a major thing for him to try to understand and try to deal with.
Yeah, go on.
What I was going to say, the first thing that comes to my mind is we talk about Cap's redemption and the possible redemption, but I don't want to say in the public eye, but if you're thinking about these fellow Avengers that are going along. If we do get to a place, I'm saying it's a big if we do get to a place where the wrongs get righted, or I don't know if I can even call them wrongs, because again, every particular perspective is different. But if we get to a place where the fans' wrongs have been righted in this universe, as far as Hydra being ousted from running things, how did the other Avengers, the fellow Avengers that have followed him, how did they redeem themselves as well? Sorry, that was a very long question. But
yeah, I don't know. Michael, I've never seen you hold Mjolnir, okay? Captain America holds Mjolnir. He must be worthy.
But sure, but Come on. I mean, it's...
No, you raise a good point. If we get to the point you described, there will definitely be some explaining to do on the behalf of certain characters. And I think, this isn't our first rodeo dealing with the aftermath of big events from Civil War, on. That characters, the story is always ongoing. In certain cases, there'll be moments for atonement, perhaps. If that story were to unfold that way, I'd keep reading.
Now, I just want to go through a few books somewhat quickly, and we can just kind of talk about how they fold into the bigger universe as a whole. One of them is the Occupy Avengers book. I am absolutely delighted to talk about Hawkeye at every single opportunity. And Occupy Avengers has been going on for a little while. This is David Walker's book, is that right?
Yes.
And so this has been going on for a little while. It's the story of, it started right after Hawkeye killed the Hulk last year, and it basically takes off of his sabbatical through the course of America, and trying to basically find why he got into this gig in the first place. Turns out, killing Hydras. That's great. Next up, we've got the U.S. Avengers. The U.S. Avengers is a fascinating book by Al Ewing. All right, it came after the New Avengers book, which is, again, one of my favorite books that you guys published personally. And again, this is the story of, a group of Avengers who had previously kind of taken over a super science organization. Now they're liberating Europe from Hydra in a lot of ways. Next up, there's the Ultimates 2. Okay, those are the folks who are on the outside of the global defense grid. They're stuck in space. The series run is called Purgatory, and that says a lot of basically these folks atoning for the sins of trying to build this thing and just having to deal with wave after wave after wave of Chitauri. And it's just a great Captain Marvel story. It's a great Miss America story, as well as basically them trying to recruit Galactus to help bail them out. And then finally, just real quick, I want to talk about the Uncanny Avengers. This is the mutant team, the Unity Squad, and these are the folks who are the New Yorkers fighting the Dark Force. So those are 4 great stories that are all telling a little corner of this world.
And the last 2 are the ones, like obviously this whole all resonates around Cap and what he is or isn't doing, and the huge turn at the end. But the last 2 you brought up, the people outside the grid and outside the planet Earth grid, and then the ones within the dark dimension, feel like there's a ticking clock. It feels almost like you're in the theater for an action movie, and that's kind of very jarring to me. Is like I keep thinking about the people outside there with the waves of Chitauri coming in, and then same thing goes for in issue 2 we saw with the Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Dagger can't keep the lights on all the time
forever. So there's, I guess, I don't know if there's a question here, but I wonder, can we expect to get casualties from this? Because it feels like we're gripping the edge of our seats, scared for these people.
Well, certainly there could be. I think that the key thing is, as you said, there's a war being fought on 3 fronts. One of them is in United States proper with Captain America in real time, and then you have the Dark Force dimension, and then you have Outside the Grid. I think the looming question is, will the heroes be reunited at any one point in time? Is that possible? And if so, who makes it there?
And I want to talk about one other book real quick, just because the art on this is magnificent. It's the Secret Warriors book. And again, in case you were like me and just wondering what was going on in New Jersey, a place that not even the Dark Force dimension will go, we've got, again, Ms. Marvel, one of the iconic breakout characters the past couple of years. We've got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and they are just messing stuff up. They are liberating camps. They're raiding convoys. It's a delightful read. And again...
Oh, little T-Rex arms.
Yeah. And again, New Jersey is where it's at, actually. Again, it's the adjacent. It's just there. So this is a real fun book, and it's, again, it's one of the tie-ins. Ms. Marvel, again, she's been one of the champions. She's not out with the Red Room. She seems to be doing her own thing in Jersey.
Yeah.
Cool.
There. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then, so with that, Nick, I want to go at you one last time. You're also working on the Captain America book still. What's going on in that main arc of it, just briefly?
Well, yeah, in the Steve Rogers Captain America book, we're going to use that to really explore what Steve's reign looks like. How he's governing and how he's running Hydra. And there's a confrontation that I've been looking forward to a lot here in this next issue, where we find out exactly what Steve thinks of things like free expression and free speech. So that's going to be a nice one for especially fans of the original Civil War. And then in the Sam Wilson Captain America book, we saw at the end of Secret Empire 2, that Sam is doing something very different with his life now. He's given up being Captain America, giving up being a superhero. So this is about him being sort of slowly pulled back into the fray.
Yeah, he still wears the Captain America hoodie, though.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, no, you got that, Brent. You got to stick with it. Now, before we get into previews and say goodbye to everyone, we do need to disclose that both ABC News as well as Marvel Entertainment are owned by the Walt Disney Company, in the interest of full disclosure. Now, we have some exclusives, I know. We've got some panels, I believe, from the forthcoming issue. And actually, I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit, once they do pop up, what we are looking at here.
Nick, why don't you take this?
Sure. What are the panels, though?
So we got a Rocket Raccoon, we've got a tiny little Groot, and we've got a charming blonde man talking to the woods.
Yeah. The Guardians of the Galaxy making their appearance in our series. That was a blast for me to write.
Oh wow.
So they're doing some favors for Carol for Captain Marvel. And trying to make a particular sales pitch to some folks, and it's fun to see how it turns out.
So this issue, we saw a lot of the war on the ground in New York. Next issue, we can expect a little bit of the remix of what's going on in the area.
Exactly.
All
exactly.
Right.
Next issue, you're going to see a little bit of what's going on behind the Planetary Defense Shield.
Well, all right. So we will see everybody again in 2 weeks when Inside Marvel returns to talk about issue number 3. Send us any questions that you have. Again, I want to thank my guests so very much. Axel Alonso, Nick Spencer, both from Marvel, and of course, Michael Rothman from ABC News. I am Walt Hickey. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.